Excuse me, everyone. I don't think the mics are on a lot. Hold on a second.
I heard you over the mic.
Did you? Excuse me, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes, so if we can find our way to our seats up here. I just need one seat reserved in the front row. Also, we're going to need to make a pass so that the governor can get up to the podium. So if we can make a path and then start finding our way to our seats, we'll get started here in just a few minutes, okay?
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting, this is live coverage of a briefing by Governor Earl Ray Tomblin and state and federal officials from various agencies about long-term flood recovery. Good afternoon. I'm Beth Voorhees. The governor wants to emphasize how the state and federal governments are working hand in hand toward a goal of a more resilient West Virginia and to keep communities intact and economically strong in a sustainable way. This event will feature a 1-minute video that the governor will show about the June floods in southeastern West Virginia that killed 23 people. Also with Governor Tomblin will be John Roberts from Mountain Mission, who will speak about Project Hope, which is aimed at helping people in Elk View and Clendenin get back into their homes. Governor Tomblin will then introduce General James Hoyer for an update on the West Virginia National Guard's efforts in the flooded area. Secretary of Transportation Paul Maddox will brief us on road damage and repair. Albie Lewis from FEMA will also speak, and then Jimmy Jeanette, Director of the State Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, will take questions. As we wait for Governor Tomblin's briefing to begin, we have new announcements from FEMA as West Virginians repair or rebuild their homes. The Federal Emergency Management Agency and local Lowe's home improvement stores have teamed up to provide free information, tips, and literature on making homes stronger and safer. FEMA mitigation specialists will be on hand this week and next at in-store information centers in 5 area locations to answer questions and offer home improvement tips and proven methods to prevent and lessen damage from future disasters. Most of the information is geared for do-it-yourself work and general contractors. FEMA advisors will be available at Lowe's home improvement stores in Cabell County, in Barbersville, in Fayette County, in Fayetteville, in Kanawha County, in Cross Lanes, and Nicholas County, in Summersville. Those are the locations of the Lowe's home improvement stores where FEMA will be able to give some home improvement tips. Also today, the West Virginia Library Commission said that destruction is unimaginable at 2 public libraries, Raynell in Greenbrier County and Clendenin in Kanawha County. Officials say the Raynell Public Library is making a slow, gradual recovery. The building consumed 5 feet of water, destroying the library's entire print and digital collection. Ann Farr, director of the Raynell Public Library, says thanks to a local church group, cleanup has been better than expected and moving along quite well, and the National Guard picked up flood-damaged items left by the curb, and a contractor was hired to remove interior sheathing and insulation and to inspect the electrical wiring at the Raynell Public Library in Greenbrier County. In Kanawha County, the Clendenin Public Library was also declared a catastrophe. Powerful flood waters forced out windows and left 8 inches of mud throughout the building. No printed piece was left unscathed. Tables and chairs floated across the room, and computer equipment was destroyed. The electrical and HVAC systems are damaged beyond repair, and the structure of the Clendenin Public Library itself is uncertain. The recovery time for both of these libraries is estimated to be several months. The restoration process will be slow and tedious, but the West Virginia Library Commission saying rescue will happen. Also, the Speaker of the West Virginia House of Delegates says there likely will be a special session later this summer to provide funding for flood relief efforts. Speaker Tim Armstead of Kanawha County sent a letter to Governor Tomblin asking him to include on the call an aid proposal for area small businesses to help them rebuild. The request follows conversations Armstead had with several small business owners in his district. He is from Clendenin, who have said there are limited options and programs available to help them. In the letter, Armstead mentions a proposal made in the 2006 legislative session. That bill would have created a disaster recovery fund to provide small business grants following floods or other natural disasters.
Ladies and gentlemen, if
The
you
speaker
would,
is
please
suggesting
stand
this
and join me in
legislation,
welcoming
and the
Governor of
governor's
the great state of
briefing
West
is
Virginia,
about to
Governor
begin.
Earl Ray Tomlin.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you all for coming. But before we get started, I'd like to take a minute to thank and recognize Albie Lewis over here on the end with FEMA, General Hoyer, and the West Virginia National Guard, Paul Maddox, Secretary of Department of Highways and Transportation, and John Roberts with Mountain Mission for being here with us today. I want to thanks to our Homeland Security Advisor, Jimmy Jeanette, and to Jenny Ganaway, Chair of the West Virginia VOAD. It's our volunteer organizations active in disasters. Now, VOAD brings organizations together to coordinate not only volunteer response efforts, but also recovery, and I thank them for their outstanding work. And thank you to our local officials and emergency responders who are still out there helping and standing ready to do whatever they can. And thanks to all of you here today, from the Red Cross, the selfless individual volunteers, as you have been tirelessly helping those impacted by this flooding. At this time, I'd like to share a brief video with you as a reminder of the widespread tragedy that struck our state only 3 short weeks ago. As you all know, a huge sail blanketed nearly the entire state of West Virginia yesterday. I can tell you from watching the footage, the damage is widespread and devastating. I just know from personal experience how tough it is. Once water is dropping in your home, the mud, the loss of your personal family treasures, your pictures and so forth, and it's just devastating for families. I'm just amazed at the amount of volunteers and support that we're getting from all over the state and all over the country. We have supplies coming in from all the states. We have people in West Virginia wanting to help their neighbors, wanting to help their friends. Donations will continue to be accepted through the American Red Cross, but I know that West Virginia will continue to help your friends, families, and neighbors as they begin to clean up and rebuild homes that have been destroyed. Now, those moments will always stay with me forever. The people I met will stay with me forever, and I'm proud of knowing how quickly we stood up on their behalf. Our response from state, local, and federal governments and selfless volunteers was prompt. We were able to secure individual assistance through FEMA for 12 counties, and more than 7,000 residents have already filed. So far, FEMA has approved more than $28 million for individuals and households. We secure public assistance, which is helping rebuild our communities. And we have had state government representatives from my office, the Department of Health and Human Resources, Workforce West Virginia, and the Department of Motor Vehicles and other state agencies stationed at FEMA's disaster recovery centers across our affected counties for those who needed additional services from our state government. And the convenience of the one-stop shopping was appreciated by all those who are suffering. As part of our work at the recovery centers, we've seen some inspiring stories. There have been more than 3,300 visits to the centers. Workforce West Virginia was quick to act, and staff provided guidance to residents not only who lost their homes, but their jobs and businesses as well. More than 400 disaster-related unemployment claims have been filed. Marcia Spade from the Department of Motor Vehicles in Summersville is a Richwood native. She worked at the local recovery center for 12 hours a day, not just answering DMV questions, but also connecting those in need with any and all resources, because she is, above all else, their neighbors. Michelle Dermeyer a DHHR family support specialist, served at the Recovery Center in Creed. She was an inspiration to all who witnessed her work, going beyond the official call, even offering to help with people's laundry. I also have approved agency requests related to the replacement of records, such as vehicle titles, driver's licenses, and birth certificates that were lost, to further help individuals get back on their feet. The challenges that remain are vast, especially as we work to get people homes and keep communities intact. Currently, more than 3,000 individuals are living in damaged dwellings, and more than 1,800 are living with family or friends. But because of our early successes and so many more, I know that we're up to the test. As we continue response efforts, we are also focusing on long-term recovery. And you will hear more in a few moments from FEMA. But I'm pleased to share that at the beginning of this week, FEMA had already deployed an advanced evaluation team to West Virginia. This fast-acting team is appraising our recovery challenges. This is the fastest deployment of an advanced evaluation team ever for FEMA. Working with West Virginia's Division of Homeland Security, Volunteer West Virginia, and VOAD, we have continued to strengthen the West Virginia website, wvflood.com, as the state's one-stop shop for those needing assistance and those who want to help. Now, as I traveled across the state, visiting flood-stricken areas and watched coverage, I have been amazed at the outpouring of support from people in West Virginia and from all across the country. From the high-profile efforts of Native sons and daughters like Brad Paisley and Jennifer Gardner, to the retired lady from North Dakota who sent her check for $15, people have shown they want to help those affected by these devastating floods in any way they can. A telethon, which included the clip you just saw, raised more than $300,000. The oil and gas industry contributed more than $350,000. And our trade unions are donating labor and materials to repair electrical boxes at no charge. We encourage people to continue these generous actions, and one place you can do that is at the West Virginia Flood website. Those contributions will be used by our VOAD team to continue what we know will be a long process to rebuild our homes, economies, and communities. All of these efforts, and so many others too numerous to mention here, truly are making a difference in the lives of West Virginians. And on behalf of all those who have been helped, I offer my sincere thanks. In the coming weeks and months, we will be working with FEMA, the National Guard, our Department of Commerce, Housing Development Fund, and others to help people repair and rebuild their homes. PGA professional Bubba Watson and his fellow golfers are spearheading an effort in Greenbrier County to help with flood recovery, and we know that many others will step up with assistance as well. And today I'm pleased to be joined by one of those dedicated people, Mr. John Roberts of Mountain Mission. Now, John is leading another volunteer effort by several nonprofit groups with the goal of replacing drywall, subfloors, electrical systems, and insulation for at least 500 homes. Project Hope will help people in Elkview and Clendenin get back on their feet, and I'm pleased to have John with us today to talk a little bit more about this important effort. John?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor. General Hoyer. I want to thank a few folks for helping us pull this together. This is a unique private nonprofit partnership that would not be possible if it wasn't for several people with us here today. One of them is Glenn Jeffries. He's the owner and president of Cornerstone Interiors. Mike Shin, if you all just lift your hand, Mike Shin. He is the director of Hands On West Virginia, and we have some representatives from Lowe's of Canal City who has agreed to basically give us material at cost, and we appreciate all of you all for being here today. Since the floods began, Mountain Mission has been joined with other groups all around the state to help these families find shelter, food, and other supplies to begin the cleanup process. Through these efforts, we have tried to give them some kind of hope that there will be better days ahead. And many of these families are just tired. They're worn out, they are dejected, and they just want to get back in their homes. And that's what we want to do. With Project Hope, we want to get them back in their homes. So Glenn Jeffries approached me and said, hey, how can we do this? We started talking and come up with an idea. So today, I'm glad to announce to you that Mountain Mission, Cornerstone, Hands on West Virginia, and Lowe's of Canal City will be the main partners to be kicking off the project called HOPE, which stands for Helping Our People Along the Elk River. The HOPE project will make available to qualified homeowners free building materials to start the rebuilding process. This includes drywall, subflooring, insulation, and of course electrical supplies. While the HOPE project will not be responsible for the installation of the materials, we will do our best to match up the homeowners with volunteer organizations such as the governor has mentioned, and we desperately are in need of certified electricians to help this, especially if they are willing to volunteer their time. Mountain Mission, these other groups, HOPE as an overall organization has raised already $250,000. We're going to get this project started with this, and with the pricing, special pricing we're getting from Lowe's, we can start off committing ourselves to 150 homes. That's pretty good for a small little nonprofit in Charleston. 150 homes we're going to try to positively affect and get these families back in their homes. But we're not going to stop there. As long as we have the finances and the resources, we're going to continue working to try to reach at least 500 homes. If you go to mountainmission.com, there is a brief 3-page application on our website at mountainmission.com, which can be printed, and once it is printed, filled out, and turned into Mountain Mission, we will schedule to meet with the homeowner to do an assessment through the home, and we will give a quick approval and material list so that we can get started on these homes. What we want to make sure we do is make sure that all homeowners have already worked with FEMA and different insurance groups to make sure that they are utilizing all of the information and the programs to the best of their ability for the betterment of their family. So if you want to learn more about HOPE, you can go to mountainmission.com, learn more about that program, and I want to thank the governor for allowing us to be a part of this today, and General Hoyer for doing what he does, FEMA, and all the ladies and gentlemen that do what they do. And I want to reach out and say thank you to the volunteers. Without volunteers and people donating items, West Virginia would not be as far as we are right now. So my hat's off to this state, this great state of West Virginia, for coming together in a time of need and making a difference in these folks' homes. Thank you.
Well, thank you, John, and thanks again to all those involved with this critical work. Now, looking ahead to long-term recovery, I'm pleased to announce today that I have appointed Major General James Hoyer as West Virginia's Chief Recovery Coordinator. In this capacity, he will spearhead our sustained recovery efforts by working closely with FEMA's Advanced Evaluation Team, which I mentioned earlier, to identify gaps and ensure that all needs are met. I've also appointed Commerce Secretary Keith Burdett as our state's Disaster Recovery Officer. In this role, he will work with FEMA to help businesses and workers find additional federal help. The West Virginia National Guard, as they have so many times before, gone above and beyond in the aftermath of this tragedy. And moving forward, I've given approval for the National Guard to work directly with homeowners and businesses on demolition and debris removal, which will go a long way in our recovery efforts. I'm grateful that General Hoyer will be leading this work, and I'm pleased to introduce him today for an update from the Guard. General.
Thank you, Governor. And again, on behalf of the men and women of the National Guard, to all those who lost loved ones and to those who are suffering from losses, we keep you in our thoughts and prayers. When on Thursday evening and into Friday morning, as we were understanding the magnitude of what we were facing, Jimmy Jeanette and I worked with the governor to develop 5 lines of effort that we thought would be needed as we went past this event. In addition to the normal search and rescue, the 5 lines of effort were housing, public health, critical infrastructure, debris removal, and long-term economic recovery and community redevelopment. With that, we believe today that our assessment to the governor is that we are at the point in those 4 lines of effort, housing, public health, critical infrastructure, and debris removal, that we have a level of stability that we can now begin to focus on that long-term piece. So the governor's direction to us is that Jimmy and I will now work with Secretary Burdette to develop and establish through the rest of this administration a framework that can be used for future recovery. And our focus will be on coordinating and synchronizing public assets at all levels that are available, private, and those volunteer organizations. So the governor's direction is, again, establish a framework where we as a state can move forward from this event. And Jimmy and I will be working with Keith and with FEMA and all the other partners and all the other state agencies and federal folks and volunteers to make that happen. So, Governor, I appreciate the opportunity for the Guard to continue to be engaged. I think it's unique that, and I think Albie and Jimmy would tell us that I don't think there is a state in this nation where the Guard has been allowed to participate at the level that you have given us to participate in all aspects of this, and we greatly appreciate your leadership.
Thanks for your job.
I'm Secretary Paul Maddox, and I'm to give an update on the roadways impacted by the flood. I'd first like to say that we greatly appreciate Governor Tomlin's leadership and sense of urgency as this disaster unfolded, that we get out and provide access as quickly as possible, even though it may be temporary or a low water crossing through a creek, to get out and build those temporary roads so that people could have access and the first responders could have access to the devastated areas. We're currently in a process now of rebuilding and reconstructing. There's widespread damage to our roadway system throughout the counties impacted by this flood. About $55 million worth of roadway damage has been identified. I'd like to thank our engineering staff and our maintenance workers for getting out on the ground so quickly, getting a good feel for the impact of the damage. They worked tirelessly for the first few days after this flood to get that information needed for the governor and others to make decisions. They just did a great job. Kanawha County was one of the hardest hit counties as far as roadway damage goes. $14.2 million of roadway damage in Kanawha County, most of it in the Clendenin area. Clay County, another hard-hit county, had $9.6 million worth of roadway damage. Greenbrier County, or Nicholas County, $8.4 million worth of roadway damage. And Greenbrier County, $6.3 million in roadway damage. We currently have several contractors working on projects throughout the flooded areas. They were emergency contracts. We're currently working on developing, and we will put out the bid in the future, additional contracts to take care of roadway damages and to reconstruct our highways. We also have a lot of district crews from other parts of the state that have come into the flood areas, and they'll be working there as long as we need them to get these roads reconstructed. I'd also like to thank our DMVSC Commissioner Reed is here for her assistance during this flood event to make sure that we had staff available in these recovery centers to help our citizens that have been impacted by this flood. Again, thank you, Governor.
Thank you. I just want to commend Secretary Maddox again. You may recall at the crossings the first night, there was a bridge washing out the shopping center. There was about 500 people, I think, stranded there and didn't know when they would be able to get their vehicles out. And I said, Paul, get up there and get a road fixed some way. He said, Governor, we'll have them out there by noon tomorrow. By about 11 o'clock on that night, he texts me and says, the road is finished, the cars are moving through. So, yeah, that's a quick response, and I just really want to thank him. This time, I'd like to invite Albie Lewis. He's been great to work with, representing FEMA. Albie.
Thank you, Governor. To my friends, my colleagues here, Jimmy and General Hoyer, unbelievable, unprecedented partnership for FEMA. I can tell you that in all my years of doing this, and I've been doing this for, well, since Katrina at the federal level and the state level before that and the local level for many years before that. This is unprecedented, the amount of work that the National Guard has done, the linkage with the state and the locals, the volunteer agencies that are out there working, that entire team effort that's brought together to help West Virginians. And I'm proud to be just a small part of it. The federal family and the state continue to work together to help communities recover. I want you to know that we made it a priority to reach everyone who needs help. I'm very happy to announce that this morning I received a brief from my staff. There are 4 more families left in shelters. 3 of those families had received direct aid. There was 1 more family that was being case managed so that we can close the shelters. As the governor said earlier, we're only roughly 2.5 to 3 weeks into this disaster. This is unprecedented, and I'm very proud to be a part of that, but it's not me. It's the team effort that's gone on with all the West Virginians, the locals that have stepped up to the plate to help, the fire departments, the National Guard, and all the folks. We're entering another phase, and in that next phase, we are looking more and more towards what's the long-range outlook for many of these communities. We are starting the public assistance process that involves funding for schools, for fire departments, for funding those roads that the Secretary mentioned, funding that public infrastructure to bring a sense of normalcy back. And I'm very proud to be a part of that. The other phase that we're getting ready to enter into, as the governor said, is really our National Disaster Recovery Framework piece, in which I have appointed a Federal Disaster Recovery Coordinator who is leading the what's called the AET, an Advanced Evaluation Team that comes in and looks at more than just the FEMA programs. It's those programs outside of FEMA that works with other federal agencies and many of those county and state agencies to see what we can do in the long term. So I'm very happy to be here, Governor. I'm very happy to be a part of this effort. And all I can say is it's a team effort, and I'm very proud to be here. So thank you.
Once again, thank you, Albie, and to everyone from FEMA for all your help. We certainly do appreciate it. Jimmy, I'll ask you to come up at this time, and if the media has any questions, we'd be happy to try to respond to any questions you may have.
So, it was reported on that over a decade ago, there was a flood protection plan that was coordinated and brought about by the state. That plan was later never acted upon. My question is, do you think that was a mistake? And what, if any, action do you plan to revisit with those recommendations from that plan over a decade ago?
You want to talk?
The plan that you're talking about was pulled together after the 01 and 02 floods in southern West Virginia. There were several recommendations in that plan. Some of those recommendations were acted on. Enhanced warning. I think the warning that went out for this event, anybody who has a cell phone knew how many warnings went out as a result of what the Weather Service saw. So that was part of that national warning system and the state warning system that was done. We've enhanced the flood warning system in the state. We've expanded it using state funds and Homeland Security funds, so that there are well over, I think we have well over 100 additional gauges that were installed as a result of that. And then there were some items that required legislative action that were presented to the legislature.
And what were those? What were those other legislative actions that weren't ended up taken?
Well, there were several different things that were done prior to my coming here, but they involved work on the streams. They involved some work with the Corps of Engineers, the Conservation Agency, and I'm sure we'll take a look at some of those. But you know, when it was done back then, a lot of the things that we thought we could make a difference with, we have done, and the governor has supported those through the last several years that I've been here.
Let me just say also that when I initially declared the state of emergency, I did it in 44 counties. And the reason I did that is because, you know, when we have an event that's forecast like this, you know, I usually bring basically this team and a few others together to start preparing and to getting assets out in the areas that are forecast where disaster is going to hit. And working with the National Weather Service and others, you know, this storm was kind of moving in an area where we couldn't exactly pinpoint where it was going to hit. We knew it was going to be heavy downpours, but that's the reason I went ahead and declared the state of emergency in the 44 counties. Once the event, or once the rains came through, then we were able to narrow it down and concentrate our efforts in where we had as much as at least 10 inches of rain. So, you know, sometimes predicting weather is not always an exact science, but we try to do what we can to make sure that we got the assets we need to be prepared to respond as quickly as the event hits. Other questions?
Special legislative session?
At some point, no doubt. Obviously, we continue on a daily basis to get updates. We're anticipating well over $100 million of damage that's occurred, and we have not received a lot of information from the cities and the counties and the local areas on what losses or what expenses they may have. So we continue every day and getting several updates a day on as the reports come in, and obviously, you know, our share of that will have to come from someplace. I would anticipate a special session at some point, but I'm not sure when yet. Obviously, this is, you know, as big as it is, it's going to take some time. And, you know, just, I mean, if you think about, you know, the amount of homes and businesses that's been destroyed, the amount of debris and buildings that's going to have to be demolished and the waste hauled away, disposed of, you know, it will be an expensive and ongoing for some time to handle all the cleanup of this event. Yes, sir.
Talking about the warning system, you touched on cell phone alerts and such. What other warning systems are in place? And do you think that the cell phone alerts are adequate? From our reporting, we found many people that tragically passed away in this event were in their 70s and 80s. Does the cell phone coverage of those warnings limit those people's ability to get that warning?
Well, that's just one piece of the warning system. The warning system goes through the televisions, it goes over radio, it goes over weather radio systems. Those same alerts go to the news media. They put those alerts out. So there are numerous ways that those alerts go out. Some of the local jurisdictions also have reverse 911, and you know, they're able to actually call individual homes. But there's at least 5 different ways those alerts go out and went out that night. Through the National Alert Warning System, through NOAA, through what we call WIA alerts, which is the wireless alerts to cell phones. So there were many ways that they went out that day.
Have you talked about any, is it too soon to talk about mitigation and what should be done to prevent flooding in areas yet?
One of the things that, as far as the mitigation, they're not here today, but we are working with soil conservation obviously to get the streams cleaned up, highways, and as well as the National Guard. We're working with FEMA, but there's still a lot of debris in the streams and so forth out there that we'll need to get out as quickly as possible, because as we've watched these storms in recent days, you never know when another one may be coming. But I think that's very important that we do restore our streams and get them back flowing at a full force the way they should be when we have an event such as this. So anyhow, yes, there will be contracts going out from other agencies. I know that Paul has got a lot of debris still stuck on and underneath a lot of our state road bridges, and his crews will be getting that out as quickly as possible, along with working with soil conservation and their crews. Let me just say one other thing back to the warning system. One of the things that was different from this one, the problem we have when we had the derecho is just the massive amount of power outages that we had. And that's when we lost radio stations and TV stations, and a lot of the ways that people did get information. And that one of our recommendations was, wherever possible, especially for local radio stations, which a lot of people depend on, is to try to get generator backup. However, you could have a battery-powered radio, but if there's no signal coming, that doesn't help you get prepared. So anyhow, we did learn that from the derecho, and hopefully are being able to get information out to people quicker than we could a few years ago.
Talking with a lot of people and looking at the National Flood Insurance Program policies that these communities have, it's pretty clear that many people in these communities don't actually have flood insurance, meaning that they're dependent on FEMA grants to get through the cleanup effort. Does this, I'm asking this question, so FEMA, from what I've been told, can cover 75% for public costs, for instance, roads and such, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, and $33,000 for individuals. Does the state have a role in helping to cover these costs, and especially for the individual, which, if you don't have insurance, is kind of at the limitation of that threshold of $33,000?
I'll let Albie respond to that. Obviously, and I believe I'm right, that for individual assistance, I think that's covered 100% by FEMA, and the public assistance, which we've also qualified for, that is currently at 75, 25 from the state. Albie?
Yeah, correct, Governor. And you're right. There is a limit on what FEMA can provide. It is capped at $33,000. That's a good example why it's so important for these other agencies that are stepping up to the plate, the volunteer agencies, Lowe's, and the efforts that are going on here to bring all these groups together, the Red Cross, the Small Business Administration, all these other programs that come in to help support that. When FEMA was created, it was created to give folks a step towards recovery, to get them safe and get them sheltered, but it was never meant to really make them whole again like they were pre-disaster. So we are just one part of that entire process. That's why it's so important that we partner with all the other agencies and voluntary agencies to bring people back to normalcy.
I'd like to follow up real quick on something. Given the state of the economy, is the state going to be able to come up with its 25% of public assistance cost?
Glad you asked that question. Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons we do have a rainy day fund, and obviously we do have the money there, and fortunately, or hopefully, the legislature at the appropriate time will allow us to take that money and come up with our state match. And before we had a rainy day fund, I was around here and watched what would happen. You'd have to basically call the legislature in session and go in and cut different departments' budgets, in order to come up with the money to get people back on their feet. Fortunately now, because we do have the rainy day fund, we do have a source of revenue where we can continue and get people back on their feet, as well as offer the services that people expect from government at the same time.
So just to be clear, for the individual though, so for local governments, this is a question, for local
not considering it at this time. Obviously, you know, we're operating under some tight budget constraints ourselves, and you know, obviously with FEMA paying the 100% of their share of it, you know, it's you know, that's the best probably that we can do right now.
Hey, Governor, that debris removal is going to take that burden off.
Yeah,
individuals.
as Joe reminds me, that the debris removal for people's homes that are getting FEMA money will help that also, because if a structure's got to be torn down, it's expensive to have it demolished and hauled away. So that will be helpful to both individuals as well as businesses. Okay, if there's one more.
So, this is one that I think a lot of people have been debating. There was a 2013 report from the Division of Homeland Security that cited human-induced climate change expecting to lead to significant changes in West Virginia. They specifically cited more frequent and intense precipitation that may translate into, quote, frequent flash flooding episodes. Given the current situation, is the state at all considering and taking into account all of these considerations in mitigation of flash floods moving forward? And how so? How do you do that?
And we're sorry for that interruption. This news briefing was starting to wind up with that important question about climate change. Unfortunately, the camera in the governor's office has run out of battery, and so we will have to leave it there. A full report about this briefing will be available on West Virginia Public Broadcasting this afternoon on radio. The governor announcing West Virginia WVFlood.com, a place for assistance, help, and volunteer opportunities. And that concludes our broadcast of this live briefing from the governor and FEMA, the National Guard, the Department of Transportation, and others. I'm Beth Voorhees for the West Virginia Channel, a service of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.